The rain on Sindara fell upward. Rowan Pierce watched in fascination as crystalline droplets defied gravity, rising from the iridescent grass to merge with clouds that shimmered like mother of pearl. 3 months on this alien world, and he still couldn't quite believe the physics of it all. His greenhouse laboratory hummed softly around him, temperature controlled and carefully calibrated to house the collection of Earth plants he'd brought for cross-cultural botanical research. Day 92, he murmured into his recorder, adjusting his glasses as he examined a tomato plant that was doing surprisingly well in the alien soil mixture he'd created. The hybrid substrate continues to support Earth flora. Sindari mineral content appears to enhance chlorophyll production by approximately 18%. A crack of thunder made him jump. Through the transparent aluminum walls of his greenhouse, the city of Velshara spread out in elegant spirals of bioluminescent architecture. The Sindari built their structures from living crystal that grew according to mathematical songs. Rowan had spent hours trying to understand the principle, but the cultural liaison had simply smiled and said, "Some things must be felt, not calculated." He was wiping condensation from his glasses when he heard it. A sound that didn't belong. Not the soft patter of reverse rain or the gentle hum of his equipment. This was a whimper, thin and desperate. Rowan set down his tools and moved toward the greenhouse entrance. The diplomatic compound where he lived was quiet at this hour. Most of the Earth delegation was either sleeping or attending yet another formal function that he'd gratefully been excused from. Social gatherings weren't his strength. Plants didn't judge you for awkward silences or forgetting names. The sound came again, from the direction of the compound's ornamental garden. Rowan grabbed his jacket and stepped into the warm, humid night. The upward rain created a strange sensation, like walking through a reverse waterfall. Droplets collected on his shoulders before launching themselves skyward, leaving him somehow both wet and dry. He followed the sound past beds of native flora that glowed softly in the darkness. The Sindari aesthetic favored plants with bioluminescent properties, creating gardens that looked like captured starlight. Rowan had spent many evenings sketching them, trying to understand the symbiotic relationships between the crystalline soil and the plants, light-producing cells. There, in a small alcove between 2 flowering shrubs that pulsed with gentle blue light, something moved. Rowan's breath caught. The creature was unlike anything he'd seen in his briefings. Roughly the size of a small fox, it had a body that seemed constructed from living crystal. Geometric facets caught the ambient light, refracting it in prismatic patterns. 6 delicate legs splayed awkwardly, one bent at an unnatural angle. But it was the eyes that made Rowan's heart ache. Large, multifaceted like a dragonfly's, they held an intelligence and pain that transcended species. "Hey there," Rowan whispered, dropping slowly to his knees. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." The creature tried to crawl backward, but collapsed with a sound like wind chimes in distress. Its injured leg dragged uselessly, and Rowan could see cracks spreading through the crystalline structure, leaking a fluid that glowed faintly amber. His mind raced through the xenobiology lectures he'd half paid attention to during orientation. The Sindari were silicon-based rather than carbon-based. Their biochemistry was radically different from Earth's. But pain was universal, wasn't it? And this creature was definitely in pain. "I have a first aid kit," Rowan said, keeping his voice low and calm. "Not sure if it'll work on you, but I've got some universal sealant in my lab. Used it to repair a crack in one of my specimen containers. Maybe?" He trailed off, realizing he was babbling to a creature that probably couldn't understand him. But something in those faceted eyes seemed to soften. The creature stopped trying to retreat and instead made a sound like crystal bells chiming in harmony. "I'm going to pick you up now," Rowan warned. "Slowly. Tell me if I'm hurting you." He removed his jacket and carefully wrapped it around the creature's body, avoiding the injured leg. The creature was surprisingly light and cool to the touch, like holding a piece of sculpted glass. It trembled in his arms, but didn't struggle. Rowan carried his fragile burden back to the greenhouse, his mind already cataloging supplies. The universal sealant, yes. Crystalline creatures might respond to the same bonding agents used for silicon-based repairs. He had distilled water, which should be neutral enough. And there was a UV light that might help if the creature's biology responded to specific wavelengths. Inside the lab, he cleared his main workbench and laid out a soft cloth. The creature watched him with those mesmerizing eyes as he gently unwrapped it from his jacket. In better light, he could see that its body was covered in intricate geometric patterns, like natural fractals growing across its surface. Beautiful didn't begin to describe it. "Okay, let's see what we can do," Rowan murmured, pulling on sterile gloves. "I'm Rowan, by the way. Not that you care, probably, but it seems polite to introduce myself before playing alien veterinarian." The creature's ear equivalents. Delicate crystalline fans swiveled toward him. He worked carefully, using a magnifying lens to examine the cracks in the injured leg. The fractures followed natural cleavage planes in the crystal structure. That was good. It meant a clean break rather than a shatter. He applied the universal sealant with a fine-tipped applicator, watching as it flowed into the cracks and began to harden. The creature flinched, but didn't pull away. "Almost done," Rowan promised. "You're being very brave." He fashioned a tiny splint from sterile applicator sticks and medical tape, immobilizing the leg. It looked ridiculous, but it would keep the joint stable while the sealant cured. The glowing fluid had stopped leaking, which he took as a good sign. The creature made that chiming sound again, softer this time. Almost content. Rowan filled a shallow dish with distilled water and set it nearby. To his surprise, the creature didn't drink it. Instead, it extended one delicate paw and touched the water's surface. The liquid seemed to shimmer and then absorb into the crystalline structure through some kind of osmosis. "Fascinating," Rowan breathed, already making mental notes. "You absorb fluids through contact. That makes sense for a silicon-based life form. Surface area versus volume ratio would favor." He stopped himself. The creature didn't need a lecture on xenobiology. "Right, sorry. I ramble when I'm nervous." He smiled. "You need a name. Can't just keep calling you creature in my head. How about ... Nexus? You look like someone drew you using sacred geometry." Nexus chimed, and the sound resonated through the greenhouse in a way that made Rowan's chest feel warm. The creature's body began to glow softly from within, patterns of light moving beneath its crystalline surface like circuit pathways. "I'll take that as approval," Rowan said. "You can stay here while you heal. I've got plenty of space, and honestly, you're better company than most of the delegation." He set up a comfortable area for Nexus using soft cloths and positioning it near a warm lamp that mimicked natural light cycles. The creature settled in with obvious relief, its internal glow dimming to a gentle pulse. Rowan returned to his work, but found his attention drifting constantly to his unexpected patient. There was something calming about Nexus's presence. The greenhouse felt less lonely with the creature there, its soft chiming creating a peaceful ambiance. Hours passed. Rowan cataloged samples, updated his research notes, and checked on Nexus regularly. The creature seemed content, occasionally making small movements to test its splinted leg. Once, when Rowan brought it more water, Nexus reached out with one paw and touched his hand. The sensation was electric. Not painful, but startling. For just a moment, Rowan felt something. An impression of gratitude, of recognition, of something deeper he couldn't quite name. Then it was gone, leaving him wondering if he'd imagined it. "You're full of surprises," he told Nexus softly. The creature's eyes seemed to hold secrets as ancient as the stars. Rowan returned to his work, but couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter had changed something fundamental. He just didn't know what yet. Outside, the upward rain continued its impossible dance, and somewhere in the crystal spires of Velshara, an alarm had been triggered in the royal palace. A beacon that monitored the location of the crown princess's most treasured companion. But Rowan knew none of this. He simply hummed to himself as he worked, occasionally glancing at his new friend, completely unaware that he'd just accidentally kidnapped the most sacred creature in the Sindari Empire. The morning light on Sindara was unlike anything Earth could produce. Twin suns rose in synchronized spirals, casting interlocking shadows that created natural fractals across every surface. Rowan had been awake for hours, monitoring Nexus's recovery while pretending to focus on his research notes. The creature had slept peacefully through the night, its internal glow dimming to barely visible pulses. Now, as dawn broke, Nexus stirred and stretched, testing the splinted leg with careful movements. The chiming sounds it made seemed brighter, more energetic. "Good morning," Rowan said, offering fresh water. "How's the leg feeling?" Nexus touched the water dish, absorbing the liquid through its crystalline paw, then turned those multifaceted eyes on Rowan. The creature's body flashed with patterns of amber and gold light. Like a visual language Rowan couldn't quite decipher. "I wish I could understand you," he admitted, adjusting his glasses. "Are you someone's pet? You're too well-groomed to be wild. That pattern on your chest looks almost like jewelry." Indeed, now that he examined Nexus more closely in better light, he could see intricate engravings along the creature's chest and shoulders, geometric symbols that seemed to shift and change when viewed from different angles. They were too precise, too deliberate to be natural formations. A knock at the greenhouse door made both of them jump. Rowan's heart sank. He'd been so focused on Nexus that he'd forgotten to check his messages. 3 urgent communications from the diplomatic liaison blinked on his tablet, all marked priority. Before he could decide what to do, the door slid open. 6 figures entered, and Rowan knew immediately this was serious. They wore armor that seemed grown from the same living crystal as the city's architecture, form-fitting and elegant, yet unmistakably military. Their skin held the characteristic opalescent sheen of native Sindari, ranging from pearl white to deep sapphire blue. Each carried weapons that hummed with contained energy. The leader, a tall woman with skin like polished amethyst and eyes that glowed faintly silver, surveyed the greenhouse with an expression that mixed relief and disapproval. "Human," she said, her voice carrying the melodic quality all Sindari possessed. "You are Rowan Pierce, botanical researcher?" "I am." Rowan stood slowly, moving instinctively between the guards and Nexus. "Can I help you?" "You currently harbor royal property," the guard captain continued. "The creature behind you is Nexus, sacred companion to Crown Princess Vera of House Velshara. You will surrender it immediately." Rowan's stomach dropped. Royal property. Of course. He'd spent 3 months carefully avoiding political entanglements, keeping his head down and focusing on his plants. And now he'd accidentally kidnapped alien royalty's pet. "I found Nexus injured in the garden," he explained quickly. "One of the legs was broken. I was just trying to help." Silence. The captain's hand moved to her weapon. "You will explain yourself to Princess Vera directly." 2 guards moved past Rowan before he could protest. They approached Nexus with reverence, their movements slow and ceremonial. The creature chimed loudly, a sound that made the greenhouse's glass panels vibrate. Instead of going to the guards, Nexus limped around them and pressed against Rowan's leg. The captain's eyes widened. "Impossible." "What?" Rowan asked, one hand instinctively moving to rest on Nexus's back. The creature's crystalline body thrummed with warmth. "Nexus has chosen," one of the other guards whispered, awe in her voice. The human has been marked. The captain recovered her composure quickly. You will both come to the palace. Now, the princess must see this. They didn't give him time to change, or even grab his research notes. 2 guards flanked Rowan, while another carefully lifted Nexus, who protested with distressed chimes until Rowan was allowed to carry the creature himself. The diplomatic liaison met them in the compound courtyard, his blue skin pale with worry. "Rowan, what have you done?" He hissed. "Helped an injured animal," Rowan replied, though his hands were shaking. "I didn't know. Nexus is not simply a pet. The creature is a quantum fox, one of 3 in existence. They're sacred bonds, connecting the royal family to the planet's consciousness itself. To touch one without permission is punishable by crystal imprisonment," the captain finished coldly. "Though given the circumstances, the princess will decide." The journey to the palace took 30 minutes by hovering transport. Rowan spent the time trying to calm his racing heart while Nexus purred. He'd started thinking of the chiming as purring contentedly in his arms. The creature seemed completely unconcerned by the armed escort or Rowan's impending doom. "You're not helping," he whispered to Nexus. "I'm probably going to end up in an alien jail because of you." Nexus responded by nuzzling against his chest, creating that same electric sensation he'd felt before. This time it was stronger. For a moment, Rowan could have sworn he felt emotions that weren't his own. Affection, amusement, and something deeper. Like recognition. The palace was a structure that defied earthly architectural principles. It grew from the planet's surface like a massive geode, all sharp angles and smooth curves that caught light and transformed it into rainbow patterns. Living crystal formed walls that were simultaneously transparent and opaque, revealing glimpses of impossible gardens within. They entered through doors that sang open, musical notes triggering the crystalline structure to part. Inside, the temperature dropped noticeably, comfortable for the Sundari's silicon-based biology. Rowan felt goosebumps rise on his arms. Servants and courtiers stopped to stare as the procession passed. Rowan heard whispers in the melodic Sundari language, catching only fragments through his translator implant. Human, Nexus, bonded. That last word seemed to cause the most shock. The throne room, though calling it a room, felt inadequate, opened like the interior of a massive crystal cave. Faceted walls rose to impossible heights, meeting in a dome that seemed to capture pieces of the sky itself. Bioluminescent plants created gardens along the walls, their light reflecting and refracting until the entire space glowed. At the far end, on a dais of living diamond, sat a figure that made Rowan's breath catch. Princess Vera was tall and elegant, her body composed of crystal that shifted through shades of blue and violet as she moved. Her form was humanoid, but clearly alien, with elongated limbs and fingers that tapered to delicate points. Geometric patterns covered her skin, similar to Nexus's, but more elaborate, forming a natural armor of beauty. Her face held features that were almost but not quite human-high cheekbones, a delicate nose, lips that curved in an expression between concern and curiosity. But it was her eyes that captured Rowan completely. They were the color of deep space, dark blue shot through with stars that actually moved, like galaxies in miniature. She wore robes that seemed woven from solidified light, and a crown of living crystal that grew naturally from her temples. Branching like delicate antlers, Rowan forgot to breathe. "Approach," Vera commanded, her voice like wind chimes in a storm, beautiful and slightly dangerous. The guards pushed him forward. Rowan stumbled, nearly dropping Nexus, but managed to keep his balance. He stopped at the base of the dais and attempted what he hoped was a respectful bow. His cultural briefings had covered Sindari customs, but theory was different from practice. "Your Highness," he managed, "I apologize for any offense. I didn't know. You found Nexus injured and provided medical care. Vera interrupted, descending from her throne with fluid grace. Up close, she was even more striking. Taller than him by several inches, moving with the precision of someone who understood exactly how beautiful she was. Despite having no knowledge of quantum fox biology, despite the risk to yourself. I couldn't just leave an injured creature, Rowan said. It didn't seem to matter what species either of us were. Vera stopped directly before him, so close he could see the light moving beneath her crystalline skin like slow lightning. And the splint? The sealant? I improvised. Used materials from my lab. He shifted Nexus carefully. The leg should heal cleanly, but the splint needs to stay on for at least another week. And you'll want to monitor the sealed fractures for. He stopped, realizing he was lecturing an alien princess about caring for her own companion. Sorry, professional habit. To his surprise, Vera's lips curved into a smile. You are either very brave or very foolish, Rowan Pierce. Mostly foolish, he admitted. It's kind of my defining trait. A sound like crystal bells filled the throne room. It took Rowan a moment to realize Vera was laughing. High Chamberlain Torvin would have me imprison you for touching sacred property, she said, her smile fading. The law is clear on this matter. Rowan's heart sank. I understand. However, Vera continued, reaching out to stroke Nexus's head. The law was written before a quantum fox chose a second mind. This has not happened in 3,000 years. Chose? Rowan looked down at Nexus, who chimed happily. What does that mean? Quantum foxes bond for life with one being. The connection is telepathic, allowing sharing of memories, emotions, even thoughts. Vera's star-filled eyes studied him intently. Nexus bonded with me when I was a child. To form a secondary bond. She paused. It indicates a connection of souls. A compatibility that transcends species. The throne room had gone completely silent. Rowan could feel dozens of eyes on him, and none of them seemed friendly. Your Highness, a new voice interrupted. An older Sindari male stepped forward, his crystalline body a deep blue that bordered on black, his face carved in disapproving lines. This is unprecedented. The human must be what, Torvin? Vera's voice carried an edge that made several courtiers step back. Punished for saving my dearest companion? For showing kindness without thought of reward? He violated sacred law, Torvin insisted. Regardless of intent, Nexus chose him. Vera's words rang through the chamber. Would you contradict the judgment of a quantum fox? Question divine wisdom? Torvin's mouth worked silently. Finally, he bowed stiffly. Of course not, Your Highness. Vera turned back to Rowan, and her expression softened. I propose an alternative to imprisonment. You will serve as keeper of the quantum garden, working alongside me to tend the sacred flora that sustains Nexus and the other quantum foxes. It is a position of honor, typically reserved for those of royal blood. I'm a botanist, not a diplomat, Rowan said. I don't know anything about court politics or, plants. Vera gestured to Nexus. And apparently, you know how to care for crystalline life forms despite no training. That is sufficient. It wasn't a request. Rowan understood that much. But as he looked into Vera's eyes, he saw something beyond royal command. Curiosity, perhaps. Or the same strange recognition he'd felt for Nexus. When do I start? He asked. Vera's smile returned, warmer this time. You already have. High Chamberlain Torvin followed Princess Vera as she left the throne room, his expression thunderous. This is madness, Your Highness, he said once they were alone in her private chambers. A human in the quantum garden? The Council will never allow it. The Council serves at my pleasure, Vera replied, though her tone suggested she knew the situation was more complicated. She moved to the window, looking out over the crystal gardens of the palace. And Nexus has chosen. That supersedes political concerns, does it? Torvin's voice was sharp. Or are you using divine law to justify a fascination with an alien? Vera turned, her eyes flashing. Choose your next words carefully, Torvin. The High Chamberlain bowed. Forgive my bluntness, but you must see how this appears. Your cousin, Lady Seraphine, already questions your fitness to rule. This will give her ammunition. Let Seraphine question all she wishes. Vera's voice was firm. I am Crown Princess, chosen by the Quantum Foxes themselves. My authority is not subject to her approval. And when the human's presence disrupts the garden, when his alien biology contaminates sacred space, then we will address it. Vera softened slightly. Torvin, I understand your concerns, but Nexus has never been wrong. If the fox sees something in Rowan Pierce, then so shall I, at least until he proves otherwise. Torvin bowed again, but his expression remained troubled. As you command, Your Highness. Rowan was escorted to new quarters in the palace's residential wing. The room was beautiful but alien, with furniture that grew from the floor and walls that displayed constantly shifting patterns. A young Sindari servant showed him how to adjust the temperature and lighting, speaking slowly to accommodate his translator implant. The princess will send for you tomorrow, the servant explained, to begin your duties in the Quantum Garden. Do you know what those duties involve? Rowan asked. The servant's crystalline features arranged themselves in what might have been a smile. No one outside the royal family has entered the Quantum Garden in generations. You will learn directly from Princess Vera. After the servant left, Rowan sat on the edge of what he assumed was a bed, a platform that molded itself to his body, and tried to process everything. 24 hours ago, his biggest concern had been whether his tomato plants would adapt to alien soil. Now he was living in a palace, appointed to a sacred position, and somehow bonded to a creature that connected him telepathically to the alien princess. A soft chiming announced a visitor. The door dilated open to reveal Vera herself, still in her formal robes, but crown removed. She looked younger without it, less intimidating. May I enter? She asked. It's your palace, Rowan said, then winced. Sorry, yes, of course. Vera glided into the room, and suddenly the spacious quarters felt intimate. She carried Nexus, who immediately jumped from her arms to Rowan's lap, purring contentedly. Traitor, Vera told the fox, but her tone was affectionate. She settled gracefully into a chair that shaped itself to her form. I wanted to apologize for the dramatic introduction. Torvin has a flair for intimidation. I did kidnap your pet, Rowan pointed out. Some dramatics seem fair. You rescued my companion, Vera corrected. There is a difference. She watched as Rowan stroked Nexus's crystalline back. Tell me, Rowan Pierce, what do you feel when you touch Nexus? Rowan considered lying, then decided against it. Warmth, and sometimes ... impressions, like emotions that aren't mine. That is the bond forming. Vera leaned forward, starlight swirling in her eyes. It will grow stronger. Eventually, you will be able to share thoughts, memories. Nexus will become a bridge between us. Between us? I feel what Nexus feels. Soon, that will include what Nexus feels from you. She smiled at his obvious discomfort. Do not worry. The bond respects privacy. It shares only what we allow once we learn to control it. And if I can't learn to control it, then we will teach you. Vera stood, moving closer. The Quantum Garden is more than just plants, Rowan. It is the heart of our world, the place where consciousness and matter merge. To work there requires trust. Complete trust. She extended her hand, crystalline fingers catching the light. I would like to begin building that trust May I? Rowan hesitated, then placed his hand in hers. Her skin was cool and smooth, like polished stone, but somehow alive with energy. The moment they touched, the world shifted. Images flooded his mind. Vera as a child, receiving Nexus in a ceremony of light and song. Years of companionship, of growing up with a telepathic companion who knew her deepest fears and dreams. The loneliness of royalty, surrounded by people yet truly known by only one creature. The weight of duty, of tradition, of expectations that threatened to crush individuality. And beneath it all, a yearning. For connection. For someone who saw beyond the crown and the crystal skin to the person beneath. Rowan gasped as Vera released his hand. That was ... overwhelming? Vera suggested. Yes, but necessary. Now you understand what the bond entails. You're lonely, Rowan said softly. Despite all of this, he gestured to the palace around them. Vera's expression flickered with surprise, then something like relief. Yes, though few would dare say so directly. She smiled. Perhaps Nexus chose well after all. I'm still just a botanist who talks to plants instead of people, Rowan warned. Good, Vera replied. I have enough people in my life. Perhaps what I need is someone who understands the value of silence and growth. They stood there, connected by the small crystalline creature between them. Two beings from different worlds finding unexpected common ground outside. The twin suns set in spiraling patterns, painting the crystal city in shades of amber and rose. And in the shadows of the palace, Lady Seraphine watched through crystal walls, her expression calculating as she observed the human and her cousin, plotting how best to use this development to her advantage. The game for the throne had just become infinitely more complicated.